Hello everybody, welcome to my channel or welcome back. My name is Orion Pershad and today I'm going to be teaching you guys some things about the about the compound hydrogen peroxide. So hydrogen peroxide is also known as DiHydrogen Dioxide, peroxide, or Perhydrol. There are many names for it, but these are just the three main names that people mostly say or refer to it as, other than hydrogen peroxide. So I hope everyone's doing good, and let's get right into it. The juicy information. First, let's start off with some history. So hydrogen peroxide was first isolated in 1818 by French chemist Louis Jacques Thenard when he reacted barium peroxide with nitric acid. So this is a bit of a history. This is the French chemist Louis Jacques Thenard who first isolated hydrogen peroxide in 1818. So now let's move on to a little bit more information. What is hydrogen peroxide really? Hydrogen peroxide is a compound, which is two elements or more come together to form a compound. So hydrogen peroxide is a compound made up of the elements hydrogen and oxygen. So hydrogen and oxygen with the formula H2O2. Now I know that seems like a familiar thing because of water, which is also a compound and has the formula H2O. But this hydrogen peroxide is H2O2 because it has two hydrogens and two oxygens, whereas water only has two hydrogens and one oxygen. So that is the difference here between hydrogen peroxide and water. So with that, we can also see a little bit of similarities between the two, but they're two different things, two different compounds. Just because of the difference of amounts of elements in them, they're different compounds. They form different compounds, sorry. Hydrogen and oxygen are nonmetals, so H2O2 has a covalent bond. Two nonmetals make a covalent bond, and hydrogen and oxygen are both nonmetals. It has a gram formula mass of 34.0147 G or mol. Here is kind of like an equation to show how we arrived at that number, or why it weighs 34.0147. So remember, it has two hydrogens, and one hydrogen weigh 1.0 grams. So 2 times 1 is 2.0 grams. Okay? And it also has two oxygens, and one oxygen weighs 16.0 grams. So 2 times 16 is 32.0 G. So remember remember the hydrogen and oxygen, they come together, the two hydrogens and the two oxygens. So we add those two numbers together and we get 34.0 G. So hydrogen peroxide can be found naturally, but it is mostly man-made in a large chemical plants by using many different methods. It can be made by introducing natural gas as a source of hydrogen, which is then reacted with oxygen in a catalytic process under heat. Now let's go into some chemical properties of hydrogen peroxide. So the color of it doesn't have a color, it's colorless, just like water, because remember, they share similarities, so it's colorless like water. But in its pure form, it is a tiny little bit palish blue, but it's mostly colorless like water. Its texture is liquid in its natural state. Its density is 1.45 grams per cm cube. At room temperature, it is a liquid. Its melting point is 31.23 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 4.43 degrees Celsius. Its boiling point is 302.4 degrees Fahrenheit or 150.2 degrees Celsius. So let's get into where do we find it. Hydrogen peroxide can be found naturally all over the world, in surface water, groundwater, in the atmosphere around us, in the entire world, in the air, and even in our bodies, like in the lung, gut, and thyroid gland. It can also be found in other biological systems, like in other plants, animals, flora, fauna, in other biological systems. Or maybe even in a brown bottle in your own cabinet for many different uses, which we'll now get into. So some uses of hydrogen peroxide. As I said, a lot of us have hydrogen peroxide in our homes because it can be used for a lot of medical purposes, like cleaning cuts or disinfecting them, removing earwax, unclogging the ears, whitening teeth, helps swollen gums, acne, etc. It can also be used in the household to sanitize and disinfect. It can clean pots, pans, utensils, sponges, and other household items, maybe like your fridge or your stove and pots and pans and stuff. It can also clean your feet and nails, so pedicure, manicures. It can remove stains from clothing, etc. Here is a Lewis dot structure of hydrogen peroxide, which shows the bonds and how the two elements come together, and how the elements come together to form this compound. So we see the bond between the oxygens and the hydrogens. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. I hope you guys, my goal here is that I help someone, so I hope you guys learned something, or maybe I helped you in your homework or your assignment or your projects on presentations just like this. So you can I hope you gathered information here and you use it, and I hope you retain information and learned a lot. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you guys for listening and staying this long. Thank you, have a good day, and best of luck. Goodbye.